I remember, way back in September, I asked myself, what will I learn from the survey of Philippine literature in English? Long before, during the Spanish era, Philippines had already literatures. One of these are El Filibusterismo and Noli Me Tangere by Dr. Jose Rizal. But have you ever heard about Fray Botod? Well, it is written by one of the famous fraile in the Spanish period, who was Graciano Lopez Jaena. I believe surveying the satirical content of Fray Botod would be very interesting. However, I have this one question that I am still wondering before this semester ends. One day, I woke up and went to the LMS app to open the course English 16. Then, my brain said, how will I apply my learnings about the Fray Botod story as a future educator and as a person? To further know the story, let's explore some of the scenes that happened in the story. In this scene, you can see behind the two marites the true color of Fray Botod. Oh, if you're wondering what marites is, it's a term that has been formed and used by the Gen Z. The marites natures are CCTV camera, commonly known as Chismosa Mahintayon, and Amiga ni Mama. Moving on, gossiping about the notorious seal without whiskers, Fray Botod, or also known as Friar Ano. In the story, these marites discuss the dreadful and unjust treatment of the priest towards the people. They spew vulgar insults to the friar, gossiping about his physical appearance and name. This friar is known to be violent and aggressive, threatening the people. He even molested the poor young lady from his convent, committing lasciviousness. Fray Botod had she-kids or kanding-kanding, which were a group of very young female children which are forcefully owned and deceived by the friar. He promised them and their family to have a good education, but instead, all they got were lustful kerosene and severe roles. In this next scene, the priest orders his sacristan to bring his latigo, whipping the poor man and leaving some bruises and sweat. The friar wasn't even convinced of the man's excuse, who took care of his wife, leaving the friar's hacienda for 3 days. A man begging and kneeling for the friars, who's really furious and sadistic. The priest was only sitting and drinking his tuba with his left hand while holding a latigo with his right hand. After exploring these scenes, it made me wonder, what can I do as a future teacher and as a person to educate the 21st century learners about the satirical content or story of Graciano Lopez Jaena? And because of that, I search and dig deeper about the story. And this is what I discovered. The key is to understand the different literary analyses that are being used in the story and somehow relate them to the 21st century learners. In scene 1, it utilizes feminist criticism because women during the time of Spanish colonial era were viewed as nothing more than toys for pleasuring and slavery. For his nightly routine, the she-kids were expected to do their roles. There was one who was rubbing his head, one was tickling the sole of his feet, and one was removing his lice, and so on and so forth. Though it was not explicitly stated that he had sexual relationship with them. Moving on, in the scene 2, we have the sociological criticism. Since the Philippines were colonized by much richer and larger country, it was oppressed and downgraded by the colonizers. As such, unequal treatment and discrimination were given to the Filipinos. Commoners were stripped out of their properties. Politicians gambled until their opponents lost a penny. Women were raped from everywhere, and people tortured and suffered until their last terrifying death. That was the life they were forced to live in. Unfair, demeaning, and abusive. This can be observed in a story where Fray Botod made an unfair deal with a farmer who wanted to grow his own crops. A man tortured since he failed to do such a task. Women implicitly raped just people who were sued, and many more. All in all, it is essential to understand and grasp the story to continue to enlighten the younger generations about the unjust treatment of our colonizers so that we can prevent such occurrences that will possibly repeat the histories. Quick tip: be more curious, be like me. That's all for today. See you next Saturday.